אוקיי. טוב, אז בוא נתחיל. אז ערב טוב לכולם שוב. עמותת סיפור חכאיה שמחה היום לארח את פרופסור כמאל אל-מאלכ, פרופסור מצרי, שידבר איתנו על העבודה האקדמית שלו וגם ספרים שהוא כתב, שכולם עוסקים בנרטיבים, בסכסוך הישראלי-ערבי, ובהחלט יהיה מעניין לשמוע את הצד השני, מה שנקרא היום. אם זה צד שני, תכף אנחנו נגלה במהלך הערב. נגיד כמה מילים ראשית על עמותת סיפור חכאיה. אנחנו עמותה שעוסקת בחינוך, בהתעסקות בשני הנרטיבים, הישראלי והפלסטיני. חשוב לנו להדגיש בימים אלה של תחילת החופש הגדול, שאנחנו במאמצים גדולים להתחיל שנה שנייה בתיכונים, להתחיל תוכנית לימודים אופק בסכסוך בתיכונים, אחרי שסיימנו שנה ראשונה בה למדו לפחות 1,000 תלמידים ברחבי הארץ במספר בתי ספר, למדו בשעת מה שנקרא שעת חינוך כללית בכיתה י' וכמה וגם בכיתות אחרות, אבל בתיכון למדו היבטים שונים בסכסוך הישראלי-פלסטיני, בקונפליקט, בדרכים להתמודד איתו, להבין אותו, להכיר אותו, מעורבות פוליטית ודברים כאלה. אנחנו מזמינים כל מי שנמצא כעת יחד איתנו, מורים, אנשי חינוך, מנהלים, אנשים שקרובים לחינוך, הורים, סבים וסבתות, שהיו רוצים לשמוע על התוכנית או לקשר אותנו לאנשי חינוך בבתי ספר שיכולים להתעניין בתוכנית. אנחנו במאמצים להגדיל כדי שבשנה הבאה יותר מ1,000 תלמידים, הרבה יותר מ1,000 תלמידים ילמדו את התוכנית ויחשפו לנרטיבים השונים ולמורכבות הגדולה הזאת של הסכסוך שממאן להיפטר, ויקח זמן, אבל חינוך זה בוודאי אחת הדרכים הטובות לנסות ולהגיע לסיומו של הסכסוך, ולהגיע בסופו של דבר למה שיהיה הפתרון, מדינה אחת, שתי מדינות, פדרציה, קונפדרציה, רעיונות אחרים, אבל להגיע למצב שבו שני העמים חיים זה ליד זה בשלום, ביחסי שכנות טובה, שיתוף פעולה וכל הדברים שאני חושב שכל אחד מאיתנו בצורה כזאת או אחרת חולם עליהם. אז שוב פעם, בסוף השיחה נזכיר את אופק בסכסוך, כי באמת היום זה הפרויקט המרכזי של העמותה. כמובן, שיחות הזום שאנחנו עושים מפעם לפעם, ויש לפעמים לאנשים פה, יש גם רעיונות להביא אנשים לשיחה איתנו. זה המקום בעצם להודות לאיתן צור. איתן הוא יושב ראש פורום חברה משותפת, והוא קישר אותנו עם פרופסור כמאל אל-מאלכ, והתוצאה טובה היום. לצערי איתן לא משתתף איתנו היום, הוא מטופל בילד קטן, והוא אמר שהשעה מוקדמת מדי. אז נשלח לו את ההקלטה בסביבה של התוכנית. From here, ספי, אתה רוצה להגיד משהו?
לא, מצוין.
Okay, so for me, we'll move to English, and we are honored, וסליחה על האנגלית הלא הכי טובה שלי, אבל to host tonight Professor כמאל אל-מאלכ, an Egyptian scholar who is dealing for more than 40 years in various universities in the Middle East, around the world, teaching and expressing the two narratives, the Israeli and the Arabic, in different forms of in literature, in cinemas, and in other different ways. It's not an easy mission of clashing narratives and to bring them to Arabic universities is probably not very easy, and we will hear about it today. And of course, after Dr. Al-Malek speech or lecture, we'll be able to ask questions. A few words about Professor Al-Malek. He'll say later a little bit more about himself. But as a young student, he was the first Egyptian student who came to learn in the university, in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem after the peace treaty was signed in 1977. This gave him a huge opportunity to meet Israelis, to meet Palestinians, and of course he will tell us about it also, which of course made him learn a lot about us. 40 years later, or exactly last year, he came again and teach in the Hebrew University as a professor, and of course it's a new experience. Next year, hopefully, as I understand, Professor Al-מאלכ will come again to teach in the Western Galilee College. I hope it will work out, let's say inshallah. So he will be with us again, and once if he's here again, so maybe we'll find a way to make more meetings or options of cooperation together. These years, and I think also a very important part of his of our meeting today, is that Professor Al-Málek teach in the American University in the Emirates, in the city of Sharjah, if I'm not mistaken.
The Emirates.
Yes, in the Emirates.
Yeah.
And among his students, everybody can imagine, Arabs, Muslims, Palestinians, he said also Iranians, and again, dealing with the Israeli-Arab conflict, it will be very interesting to hear about it. I think that's enough for me to say it today. Professor Al-Málek, the floor is yours, please. 1 minute before I move you there.
Yeah.
Our speech, as usual, Professor Al-Málek will speak and tell us his story. Later, we will open the
questions
for everybody for questions, for remarks. If people want in the middle to write in the chat, it's okay. We'll take it later. So once you write in the chat, nobody will forget if he has some kind of things to say. Okay, and I'm waiting, very excited to hear Professor Al-Málek's story after I read and after we spoke. So again, the floor is yours. Just let me tell me when to put the PowerPoint, or to put it
right. I think that let's put it on the first slide, and as I'm talking now, yes. Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank you and all your colleagues for having invited me to talk this evening. And I sending all of you warm greetings from Cairo in Egypt. Yeah. And okay, so I think that usually Sipur, Andy Hikaya. I have also a story, and I'd like to share it with you. And the story starts with my interest in the whole issue of coming and living among the Israelis for a while. Of course, what was available to me at the time was to come as a student. Immediately after the peace treaty was signed on the 26th of March 1979, I arrived in your country to be a student at the Hebrew University in July 1979. And I spent a whole year there. 43 years later, 2022, I came to the same university, this time not as a student, as a professor. So, second slide. Okay, so the whole point is that how did it happen? And the first thing that I'd like actually to talk to you about is curiosity from my side, that I was a soldier in the Egyptian army, and we were facing your soldiers almost like 200 meters away. I was in a place called Faid near Suez. And even after the war, I started to be very curious about the people we've been fighting for so many years. What are they about? How do they live? What do they think of us? And this drove me immediately after it was possible to come to your country to apply and to get accepted at the Hebrew University. Before I continue, I'd like to just go over some. For us, you were the other. The other that is strange, outsider, foreign, and so on. And that's what I'd like to comment about, the other or the stranger in Arab cultural ways or view or prism. So let us just go over this. If we have the next slide, please. So who is the other in Arab culture? As you all know, I'm going to say it both in Arabic and English, and of course you would know it in Hebrew. Al-Gharib is the outsider or the other, and as you could see that the Al-Gharib, the other, is actually very close to Ghurub, the sunset, or Ghurba, diaspora, or Gharaba, strangeness. As you all know, that Arabic as well as Hebrew goes by root and pattern. You know that, right? And so there's also other ways to say something is outsider or strange. You have ajnabi, khariji, dakhil, zanim, tarif, foreign, outsider, intruder, illegitimate, bastard, or temporary. So the next one, this is just in general, the idea of a stranger. So I'm going to ask you to think about this, and if Avi can just, can hear me as I say next. Let us look at the, no, before that, we go back to the soil. If we look at the image of the soil, this one, we will find that the soil in its natural place is good. It looks really good. It is a sign of life, a sign of khair, goodness, and so on. Next one. But if this soil is outside its natural place, out of place, it becomes dirt. This is actually by somebody called Mary Douglas, if you recognize the name. So dirt is matter out of place. So let's pay attention to this, because when people start to think of themselves and the others in relation of what is a familiar and what is foreign, this is how they actually hold the person that is not one of them, that is outside the group. Next. So the next one, yes. Likewise, let us just look at this. The hair around the head is beautiful, but the hair outside it in the sink, as you could see, is something that is not beautiful, is disgusting. The next one. All right. Okay. So let us start imagining the world in different ways. And in order to kind of show you what happens when we actually break the barrier and get to know each other. So the other is not a foreigner or outsider or a stranger, but the other as familiar. Let's just think about the world as a circle. If we think about the world as a circle, where do you think we're going to find ourselves? Where would we find ourselves? Where would we place the other? Next. Here is the circle. And I do not know if I can hear you, but if we were really face to face, usually I would ask and pause for a while to hear your responses. But naturally, we will put ourselves in the middle, right? So we will become the center. So anything outside the center is going to be a outside, eccentric. Eccentric in English means strange or weird or unfamiliar. So the next one, if we started to think of the world as something else, being from Egypt, the pyramid is very important for us. So if we can imagine the world as a pyramid, where would we put ourselves? I'm going to go over this very quickly. Obviously, we're going to put ourselves on top. And then by virtue of being on the top, we will see each other people as at the base. And therefore, we will see the world in a hierarchical, in this order. We are better than others, we are higher than others, and so on. The next one. If we start to think about the world as a tree, again, how are we going to relate to the others? Most probably, we will think ourselves as the root of that tree, okay, the trunk of that tree, and then perhaps the others as the branches. Well, that's not bad image totally, because it's organic. There is a connection between the root and the trunk of the tree and the branches. So if we start looking at ourselves as the root and the trunk of a tree and others as branches, it's not totally negative. It's a little bit better. But there are other ways to look at the other. Let us look at the next one. Now I already showed you the world as a circle, and that is perhaps one of the worst to look at the world and others, because we, put ourselves in the middle and others as outside. But can we think of a geometric shape that has two centers? We are all accustomed to thinking that every structure has one center. Every structure has one, essential point, and the other is less important. But can we think of a structure or a geometric shape that has two centers? So let's think about this a little bit. Sorry? Can anybody answer me?
Sphere.
Okay.
Elliptic.
Sphere is good.
Elliptic
And
shape.
absolutely. One of you said that? Was it Avi who said that?
No.
Okay. Well, no. Okay. So let us do the one that is next. You will see that this actually, the one that is next, a slide that would show.
Professor Malek, please excuse me for a minute. I want to. There are people who are waiting, and I see that with the PowerPoint, I can't let people in. So I.
Oh yeah, no, let them in. Let them in. That's that's even more important, of course. They can always hear me. Yes, of course.
Yes.
Of course, let them in. Absolutely.
Let's see.
אבי, תכניס את כולם ואז תמנה אותי co-host. פשוט נכנסתי כאורח ולא כמארח.
אבל עכשיו, אני מקווה שלא עשיתי פה שטויות עכשיו.
Okay, let them in.
1 minute.
And then
I think.
Sure.
I don't know what I did. Wait.
אני אכנס שוב הפעם כמארח, אבל זה ייקח לי דקה. רגע. טוב, אני אצא ואכנס.
אני איבדתי את המסך.
From my side, I see about 23 participants.
Yes, I lost the
Connection?
No, I lost the camera. And
On the slides or on my face?
No, the slide I see.
אנחנו רואים אותך.
Oh, here, רגע, now, yeah, now
Okay. All
now
right.
I can see everybody. Let me say people.
Just go back to the slides and go to the ellipse
1 minute.
to move on faster.
I'll make סליחה לכולם על התקלה. אנחנו כבר נמשיך. צירפתי פה את כולם, אני לא רואה ש... טוב, ספי ייכנס...
אני עכשיו בפנים.
בסדר, אז אתה...
אני אחראי להכניס אנשים.
בסדר, אז אנחנו נמשיך. share screen, נחזור למצגת. מצגת שלנו.
All right. I see more participants now.
Yes.
Yeah, there were a few more.
Yes. Okay. I have 28
Yeah.
as I could see it from my side.
איפה המצגת שלנו? אז עכשיו היא נעלמה לי המצגת. רגע.
מתנצלים. We are sorry, everybody.
טוב.
We are just volunteers, not professionals.
אז אנחנו היינו כאן.
Yeah.
אוקיי?
All right.
אוקיי?
Very good.
אוקיי.
Very good. If we can go to the slide that has the ellipse right away, and then I'll proceed, you know.
This one?
Okay. Yeah, the one with the ellipse, the two centers. I think that's what's important, yeah. So.
No, so.
Okay. All right. And so as I was explaining, that the move from just a word with one center in which we place ourselves and others as in the margin is not a good image of how to relate to the other. What I'd like to suggest this evening is that there is a better shape that we can think about, that we can adopt, and that is the ellipse. If we can see it on the screen, that would be really great. It's those of you who know this shape. It's an oblong shape, not exactly a circle, and it has two centers, and each center is as important as the other. And the shape cannot stand alone, stand by itself without the two centers. That's how I view the better way of looking at us as Arabs and Jews, not in terms of hierarchy, one is better than the other, one is superior than the other, but rather as two important central figures that would have to try to find a way of sharing the life on this planet, not necessarily just in the Middle East. And so I was just talking in certain kind of theoretical terms about the shift, because I believe that the shift has to start in the mind first before you start actual peacemaking. Sometimes what you need to do is to imagine what is it that you want to have. You cannot really imagine peace. I'm sorry, you cannot actually make peace without imagining it. So as you could see, that in human history, this has always been the case before great discoveries, before we, as human beings, started to explore the universe and the space, and before we landed on the moon. You all know, very early on, that people in literature started to imagine spaceships and trips into space. And if you all remember this novel called Time Machine by H.G. Wells and so on, you imagine it first, then it may happen. So something has to change in the mind first, something that we have to kind of dream of And I cannot really think of a better example than in your own story, the story of the Jewish people, that you imagine things first, you craved to be in a certain land first. There is a center out there for you wherever you were in the world over the thousands of years. And then this imagining has helped you to create it and make it a reality. Likewise, real peace between us as Arabs and Jews will have to start with people imagining together a better world, a shared life, and so on. So maybe you can just move ahead a little bit without necessarily have to look at the slides unless they come back. That's fine. All right. And that's why after the year I spent here with you, I'm talking about as a student, I became very much interested in studying more, and I actually shifted my academic interests from English literature alone to English and history, English and Arabic literature, and later also Hebrew literature. What I studied in Israel, it was amazing, 1979 to 1980, history, of course, the language. I was amazed to see the similarities between Arabic and Hebrew, for example. And I'd like to kind of just share with you a couple of observations about the language and the literature. There's a lot of common that is in common between us as Arabs and Jews, and our languages, mutual, talking respective languages, Arabic and Hebrew, reveal that similarity. In the way we pronounce certain things, in the name we give to the same thing, starting even with small little things. The whole thing about Adam is the same. You mention Adama as earth or land. Adim, al-ard, as we say in Arabic, is also the land. And there are things that are a little bit is touching actually to see the similarity between Arabic and Hebrew. For example, in English, when a man loses his wife, his name is what? What is the name given to a man who lost his wife?
A widower. Widower.
A widower. Widower. And a woman who loses her husband in death is?
Widow.
A widow. Yes, or the same in Arabic and many other languages, but only in Arabic and Hebrew, I think, as far as I know, are the only two languages that would give a particular name to a woman, to a mother who lost her son. Ima, I think, or Shikula, right? Shakula.
Right.
And the same Thekla, Thekla in Arabic, and Shakula, if I'm not mistaken. And then you even add more in Hebrew. You say the whole Mishpacha Shakula, if I'm not wrong in saying that. And so this is very touching, actually, when you see that there is in the depth of human grief, we have a word for it, and you have a word for it, the same, very similar word. Thakla, the mother who lost her son to death, and the same for the Jewish mother who lost her son in death. And then other touching things, for at least for me, when I discovered it, the whole idea of Rahamim, merciful. And I believe it's one of the names or the epithets of our Creator, right? And it's Rahim in Arabic, and Rahman and so on. In both Arabic and Hebrew, they are derived from Rahim, the womb of the woman, from which we were made and born. Okay. And so it's very interesting to see that we may disagree, clash. Very sadly, as we speak, there are some bloody clashes going on in Jenin and so on. But we should not be discouraged because of this, but we fight the violence and the hatred by demanding that there should be peace and amity between the two people, rather than condemn and point out and hate one another because of the bloodshed that is going on. So this is how I believe it, and because we cannot really ignore the present as we speak. So these similarities between the two languages was revealing to me. I went over even just or beyond the language and history. I also took courses in history. All of this 79, 80, and then I'll move on to being a professor later. I studied with, I took a very interesting course because totally new, fresh to me, with Rabbi and Professor, bless his soul. His name is David Hartman. Do you know David Hartman? Did you know him? His son, I believe, is running an institute in Jerusalem called the Shalom Hartman Institute. Sorry?
Mahon Hartman.
Yes? Yes, yeah, exactly. I believe it's the son. I studied with the father, who was originally from Montreal, if you know something about him. He was a professor of philosophy at the university, at McGill University. And this is where I studied and I got my doctorate. A little bit before me, another professor, actually Israeli professor, studied in the same university with the same professors. And yes, and studied the Ahmadiyya, you know. Okay, so what happens here is that I studied with this rabbi, a wonderful course is called Rabbinical Responses to Historical Crisis. We studied the two or more epistles, you know, responses by Ben Maimon, by Maimonides, Rambam. And the one is called, I think it's called Igeret Timan. Igeret Timan. Okay, it was in response to a particular question sent to Rabbi, of course, Maimonides. He was in Egypt, in Cairo. Don't forget that. He was the doctor of the Muslim ruler at the time and a great philosopher. And he responded to their questions. So we studied this called Igeret Timan. And also we studied other things concerning the Jewish faith and theology, actually. I also studied something about the art and art history and so on. The total amount of information and interaction with the students, Hebrew language, literature, and so on, resulted in my, as I said, shifting my concentration from pure English literature to more Middle Eastern studies, including Arabic literature and later Hebrew literature as well. Okay, and so when I became a professor, finished my PhD, it was my interest to continue this kind of newly found discovery for me, which was to, at Brown University in the 1990s, I started to teach a course that I designed with a Jewish colleague of mine, David at Brown University, Jacobson, okay, I was going to say Hartman, David Jacobson at Brown University, who was still there, and we taught together this course called Encounters Between Arabs and Jews in literature and cinema. And it was a fantastic, course. We had both Arab and Jewish students and Christians and others. And it was so popular that the students would actually bring their own families. They would bring their papa and mama to attend the class, It was such something fresh and new. And believe me, it was not a very quiet time in the Middle East. Those were the 90s, where a lot of, terrorist acts of violence were going on around. And that was precisely our response, that we're going to keep teaching in the face of violence. And this is how we should really look at our world and how to change it. And so, and then in last year, in 2022, I was in contact with the Hebrew University and Truman Institute, if of course you know this name, and they sent me an invitation that you're welcome to come and teach the course that I designed, and then later on we taught the course, or I taught that course again about particularly Egyptian. It's called Egyptian-Israeli Encounters in Literature and Cinema. Okay, and I don't know what happened to the slides, but I also, I have one of the slides that shows something about the course. And we had the students. It was a good class, a large class by Hebrew University standards. I think we had about 24 students, Arabs and Jews. The Arab students, I want to emphasize this because this is really important, and I want everybody to pay attention to this, that whoever thought of this idea of allowing Arab students from East Jerusalem to come to the Hebrew University is a wonderful person, or a whole group of people. That's really great. You want to really establish some kind of understanding, allow people to have opportunities to learn together. So I had in my classes, East Jerusalem students coming from well-to-do families that could afford to pay for the fees and so on. And of course, the majority were Jewish students. It was great. It was a fantastic experience where we learned together the whole history. Well, of course, not for the thousands of years between Egyptians and Jews, but I'm talking about particularly, from the 40s, of course, starting with the 48 till now, right? And we studied the history of the Jewish community in Egypt, their contributions to culture and to Egyptian society in general, stressing the memoirs that they wrote, autobiographies and so on, about their experiences there. Some were very positive, some were negative, no question about it.
Professor Kemael,
yes.
I took
yes.
I took the presentation off because I got understanding that I'm the only one to see it. But anyway.
Oh, I see. So it didn't okay. It's all right. It's all right. It's fine.
All the time it was on the same. I didn't change the slide about the course that you gave in Jerusalem. So, do you want to?
Okay. Well, are you able to actually show the slides and everybody would see it?
Let me see if I can do it again.
It's actually even if I am the only one and you the only one, it's not a bad idea for me because it kind of reminds me of the points that I want to stress. But anyway, it's flowing with me, and
Okay. Yeah, later.
So I mean,
later you have some pictures of you, so I.
Yeah, but you're saying that the people cannot really see these slides.
That is correct.
Okay. What I can suggest, Avi, is that make this available to people on your list later. I mean, it doesn't have to be this. It's okay with me.
Okay, so I'll send the presentation with the recording to everybody that is here.
Yeah. How about that? So that they can follow, because I must admit the photos are very, very important for people to see. For example, how can I say to you that I met your president? I actually have a photo with the president of your country, right?
Which one?
Which one? The current one. Yes. And it was what a delight it was for me to know that his mother was actually living in our country, in Ismailia. Yeah. So we have an Israeli president who has some kind of a real connection, family connection to Egypt. I'm glad to hear that, or to see that. And it was very pleasant, and I was honored to be invited to his house in Jerusalem. And I met him. It was very significant, actually, to meet him along with my colleague with whom I taught the course, co-taught the course, and I think he's known to all of you as Professor Eli Poudet. Eli Poudet, who is a professor of Middle Eastern studies, as you know, and with emphasis on the history of Egypt. All right. And so the whole idea is that when I came 43 years later, the same place, same university, it's almost like I'm an alumnus. It was just a great experience, human experience I'm talking about. And I was able to communicate with the students who reminded me of myself many years before that. And here is what I'd like to emphasize. I'd like to emphasize the importance of having an opportunity to read about each other, to read each other's writings, especially creative writing, poetry, novels, autobiographies, and what, you know, and the rest. And the idea here is that it is very revealing. Our literature reveals, you know, הספרות שלנו חשוב מאוד לקרוא. ואני מאמין so that creative words can move us. Once again, I don't have to illustrate this to you because remember, you're the people of the book, and the Torah has played a very important role in your life as a community for thousands of years, right? And so you would agree with me that words can change people. That words, if understood, if absorbed, if contemplated, can change human beings. And no event in human history happened without preparation by words. Let me give you other examples. I mean, secular examples, doesn't have to be religious examples. Secular example in human history. Let us say the French Revolution. Can you imagine for a moment that the French Revolution could have happened without a preparation by the philosophers, you know, the philosophers and the writings about the importance of freedom by French writers and philosophers? No, we cannot. You know, when people start reading in French that they should be not the subject of a monarch, king, but rather citizens of a state, right? They could not stand the idea of being ruled by an autocrat, and they made the revolution against Louis XVI, as you know, all right? And so we can prepare for change by words, and that's why I like very much your whole institution of סיפור, of Hikaya. The whole idea is that we tell each other stories, and these stories may actually change, right? And here comes some of my comments on how to make life a shared life between us, Arabs and Jews, I mean. All right. First of all, let me comment on the whole idea of tolerance. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask Avi to help me out here. And what is tolerance in Hebrew?
סובלנות.
The word for
סוב לנו.
Sorry? Sovlano. Okay. And I have some objections to that word, because tolerance, if you reflect on it a little bit, it assumes that you're stronger than the other one you're tolerating. You cannot be tolerating somebody equal to you, right? Okay, so a student cannot say to his professor, I tolerate you. I tolerate your action. It might be actually be offensive, right? You know, a lieutenant, okay, shawish, cannot say to the general, all right, to the aloof in the army, I tolerate you, or I tolerate your action. So tolerance actually presumes that there is some kind of a difference between the person tolerating the other. I'd like to think of a better word, which is empathy. The word empathy is actually a much better word, okay? And it is, I am in a position, I try to understand and assume and feel your pain. Feel your pain. That's why it's really important when we talk together as Arabs and Jews to listen to each other and understand each other's pain. I am very much I've always, you know, objected to and felt really upset to see some attempts in the Arab world to write in some writings to make it less the whole tragedy of the Holocaust, or not to mention it, or to make it as a, okay, other people also suffered equally and so on. I think it would be much better for both of us, both sides, to understand each other's pains. That's what I'm, so that's my commentary on the word tolerance. Better to use a word like empathy. The other thing is that we should really stress the importance of ma'rifah, knowledge, because knowledge it gives us actually power and also gives us some kind of a confidence. Okay. So where do we go from here? I think that this is, let me like think about a couple of things. One is that I think through listening to each other, conversations such as this, we can do a lot in trying to understand each other. Also through publications. I don't know if your institution, Hikaya and Sipur, actually, I don't know if you publish things. I think it would be important to find a way to have a program that would actually make it possible for people to publish their own stories. I know both Arabs and Jews have always had an oral tradition. You know, hikayat, you know, always kind of telling each other stories by, you know, orally. But I think it's very important to have what is oral written down. The printed word has power, and we have to record it somehow. All right? Either the voice has to be recorded, or the voice has to be translated into letters and printed. So find a way to publish these stories. From my end, I'd like to show you one of my most recent publication, and that is a novel in Arabic called تعالي معي من القدس, Come with me from Jerusalem. All right, and it is actually more or less a story based on, it's kind of autobiographical a little bit, not totally, based on my experience in Jerusalem as a student between 1979 and 1980. And of course, it has characters that reflect or kind of drawn according to the real persons that I actually met and interacted with. Okay, so that's very important. So we should have more of these Zoom meetings together. I'm talking about as a group. We should have also publications so that a wider audience would actually share with these ideas. And then the last but not least, I think I'd like to suggest something called educational tourism. Not just real tourism, the regular one, but educational tourism. Get a group of students to come and visit us in Cairo or in Alexandria, or we can go to Luxor or Aswan, okay? And it will be an organized thing with people like yourselves, you know, with them. And we do the opposite also. If we can get a group of people from students, young people from Cairo or Alexandria or elsewhere to do the same and come and share with young people in your country their own experiences. So there are many people, young people in Egypt, I can assure you, who are studying Hebrew as a language, who sometimes go to the center here. You know, we have an academic center, Israeli academic center, not very active now, but used to be very active. And yes, I stand in front of you and admit to you that there are oppositions sometimes to these moves, to interaction with Israelis, no question about it. What I'm even doing today might be objected to by my fellow Egyptians, but that should not deter us from having the courage to say that we stand together because we share some values. And these values are that we are civilized people. If we have disagreements, we talk and we can connect with each other and form human relations. I think that is very important. Let me illustrate to you, and just like not every experience in Israel was positive. I mean, I have to tell you that. I'm talking specifically about my 1 year as a student, not as a professor. So I met some student, one student at least, in my 1979 and 80, who said to me, you know, he was looks like a religious, you know, person. And he said to me, the problem between, I don't know why he kind of looked at me as if I was Palestinian. I was Egyptian and I was not living in Israel or claiming anything on the Israelis. But he said, the problem between us is not whose land this is. The problem is whose God is the real one. I did not answer him because well, that's okay. Let God decide that. All right. So, I mean, look at this. I mean, that was very negative. But a week or so later, I had a very moving experience when I was invited to by a lady called Geveret Levy, Madame Levy, who was running in a house for in those days they used to call it handicapped children. Nowadays we say it's children with special needs. It's called Beit Eliyahu. Beit Eliyahu. I think it's no longer around. There's about 25 students, all sorts of special needs, physical, obviously cannot move. Some of them mental. Some of them just not exactly well developed and so on. And it was my first time in life at that time to realize that Israelis can have children who are handicapped with special needs. Even with my knowledge, and I was a student, kind of up to my ears in studying everything Israeli, the language, the literature, and so on. But for me, because of my experience, and I was in the military, drafted and so on, I kind of primarily thought of the Israeli as a soldier, as a fighter, right? And but never thought that I would meet a human being who cannot move. Okay, these kids just could not move, but he could utter with difficulties some words in Hebrew. And the association with a mouth speaking Hebrew and a body that is totally incapacitated was really strange to me. Strange, you know? And that can be what I call in English disarming. Disarming means like, I don't know what to say, you know? But then it makes you feel that, you know, we have to realize that the common humanity in here. And this is what I would like to suggest to you as like an aside. I don't know if we can do it. Let us visit each other's centers for kids with special needs. I want Israelis to come to Cairo and we go together to visit not synagogues, not Jewish remains of this, not Abu Hatsira, okay, but real human beings who are suffering because of handicap. And then you share that human experience, okay, right, with your fellow Israelis when you go back. Maybe you can, you know, try to find ways to help. And the opposite. I'd like to have a whole group of Egyptians come into your country and you take us to Haifa and you take us to Beersheba, where you have centers of that. I actually inquired about these centers. One is called Rafaeli something. I have the information somewhere because I inquired about Beit Eliyahu, no longer there. It's no longer around. I think it was replaced by another. And one day I would like to come again to Israel to visit, and we go together to see this new center for handicapped children. Let's start with the least able among ourselves. Let's not just get, you know, professors to be with professors and old soldiers to come with each other, as 50 years of 1973 war is coming soon, as I understand, right? The more effective is to see the humanity in the other side. And the humanity can be illustrated much more by those who are disabled amongst us, the least able. And so that we can see this Jewish kid who cannot eat, you know, but still decides to hand me, this is 1979, to hand me a little flag, Egyptian flag, and an Israeli flag intertwined like this. And the lady told me that, oh, I forgot his name. This boy knew that you're coming. He understood that you're from Egypt, so he drew this. And of course, it was drawn in the most kind of touching, kind of primitive lines, but the message was sent to me. You understand? So I think that this is what we need. What we need is to discover more and more of what we have in common. And then this whole idea of concentrating on the past, really, is very dangerous, in my view. Not that you have to forget it, and I know that's very important. Memory for the Jewish people is very, very important. But if we concentrate, I'm talking about that particularly, Masalan, Egyptians and Israelis. Yes, there's a lot of tragic things in the past. The most, you know, the painful thing that I have to admit that I'm just like so upset about was just very recent, you know, this Egyptian soldier who actually killed some of your soldiers on the borders. There's no question in my mind that was done through hatred, and through kind of indoctrination. That what we have been doing, a person like myself, an Egyptian, have been doing has not really, you know, kind of affected all sorts of classes of people, not yet. But that should not discourage us from continuing to talk about a humanity that is common, right? So, אני באמת מאמן שיהיה שלום אמיתי בין העם ישראלי והעם מצרי, all right? And then I have to kind of remind you of the beautiful poem by Yehuda Amichai, in which he said, "Shnenu b'echad וכל אחת לחוד, I think, says that. So we are the two of us together and each one on his own, all right? And so that's very important, and that's the, I believe that studying together and experiencing each other's pain together is the way to discover that we have so much in common as human beings. But we have to be also take practical steps. That's why visiting each other, lecturing each other's places, teaching, and inshallah all goes well, and I'll find myself again in your country teaching in northern Galilee, and coming and seeing you in person, and you know, hearing about your stories, you know, which I love the title that you've chosen for your group, and the Sipur, the Hikaya, the Hikaya of the human beings, of the ability to make changes through words. We belong to religious faiths that stress the importance of words. We repeat the words of the Torah to change our heart, right? And to shape the kind of contours of our life, and to be always, you know, kind of remembering of the one who created all of us. And likewise also on this other side, and both the religions here, people believe that in repeating the words of the Lord, things can change. So let us in one unison say, Baruch Hashem, that has created us on this with similarities, okay, and with minds and hearts that would make it possible for us to have a shared life. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very, very much, Professor Abdel-Malek. I have many questions, but I'll take the privilege to ask one, and then, of course, let all our people here ask.
Right. Okay.
I'm very interested to know how it is when you study, when you teach it in the Emirates, how your students are, why they register to the course, how they are enthusiastic, what made them decide to join this course, and do you feel that by learning the narratives or the comparative literatures and seeing the movies, does it make any change? It works?
Okay, the short answer is yes, and I have a story to tell you, like a concrete example of how words can change. In 2006, I was teaching a course at the American University in another emirate. It's called Sharjah, Shariqa, if you've heard of it. Very conservative place. All right, and in those days, I don't want to make big claims, but let me say, because of the uniqueness of my experience, perhaps I was the first professor in this whole region to introduce Arab students in the Gulf to Yehuda Amichai. They never heard of him, and we talked about you know, Aleph Bet Yeshua. I'm talking about, you know, Mimul Ha Harut, the facing the forest. You know that story by Aleph Bet Yeshua. Okay, facing the forest. Okay, it was the first time for these students to learn, and yes, exactly. Mimul Yarot, yes. Aleph Bet Yeshua, fantastic novel, and inshallah, I wrote a little article for the Emirates Today. It's called the Imarat al-Yawm newspaper, and inshallah they will publish it. Okay, this coming Friday. If they do, I will send it to you, and people can easily translate into Hebrew. Okay. And so I taught students two poems, one by Yehuda Amichai and the other by Fadwa Tuqan. I don't know if you're familiar with this name, a great Palestinian or very famous Palestinian poet from Nablus, from the Tuqan family. Actually, it's a very important family. You should know about them because the brother Ibrahim Tuqan in the 40s was the prominent poet in Palestine. All right, so he 2006. Remember, this is before the Abraham Accord and before all of this. I taught them this course, not necessarily. I mean, it was part of a course that I said, okay, let's see what I called dialogue poems. Yani, an Israeli poem and an Arab poem. And I say not necessarily that they are aware they are writing this one in response, but let us read them in tandem, read them together. Bihad. So we read them. We discovered that there was common themes of, yearning for being part of a community. Do you know the Yehuda Amichai poem called Yerushalayim 69 or something, 68, I think? It's part of a poem about a man, Jewish of course, in East Jerusalem, watching an Arab man closing his, shop. And it was a guy is like making clothes and stuff like that. So he said, I said to him in my heart that my father in 1936 had a shop like his, but they killed him, meaning in Germany, as you know, right? Or they burned it. And my father was killed there or he died there, meaning in Germany. And that's why I am here. So there was a dialogue in the mind of the poet in this, right? And then we read Fadwa Tuqan poem called Itan, and it's about a child. And she said, I'm afraid when you grow up, Itan, you will become a soldier and you're gonna come and find yourselves actually, kind of fighting us and maybe killing our children. That's what she says, And so let's read this together and see what is common in that. And colors. So I taught them this. And the students, Arabs, and some were Iranians, some were, from India and Pakistan and so on. And of course, Arabs from other Arab countries. You could see how extremely uncomfortable they were to read a Hebrew poem, but of course in translation, or even to touch the printed matter in which, an Israeli name is there. So that was really a real experience of something like so foreign to them and so, kind of almost forbidden. Right? Now, let us switch to 2021. 2021, Shimon Shamir, you all know him, and others from Tel Aviv, they are witnesses to this incident. I asked them. They invited me on a Zoom like this, and they say, oh, Kemal, talk to us about your plans and projects and so on. And I told them about wanting to come and teach, in Israel and so on. And then they said, okay, oh, by the way, we've also invited somebody that from the Emirates, some kind of a guy from the Ministry of Culture in the Emirates. So the guy came, and I'm sorry to have to say to that, but sometimes they all kind of look alike with the local, Iqal and song. So I didn't really pay attention to him much. And also I didn't really recognize the name, Muhammad something. Okay. He did not deliberately put the last name, his last name. So that, is very famous actually. He is from the royal family, Qasimi family. Okay, and so they say, oh, Mr. Muhammad, I think it's Khalid, his name. Mr. Khalid here is from the ministry, and he'd like to share this Zoom with us. And we're very delighted, and Abraham, of course, and all that. And then suddenly, This Mr. Khalid from the Emirates, he said, Professor, you taught me in 2006 a course in which we read some Hebrew literature or translation. And then I recognized him because I just like he kind of grew up and his features were a little bit different. It turned out, and actually I found this extremely touching because I could see with my own eyes, it doesn't have to be like theoretical, that there was at least some kind of change so that this guy from the Emirates who took my course, actually found some kind of change in the way he looks at Israel. And then he was okay with the idea of appearing in some Zoom. Remember early on in the Abraham Accord and so on, people were a little bit reluctant to be associated with the Israelis, right? So kind of show each other online or something with them. There's no question in my mind that what he was taught in 2006 helped him to stand for and support peace with these Israelis because he had some, I wouldn't say profound knowledge, but some glimpse of knowledge about their own literature, okay? At a time when it was a taboo to learn anything Israeli. There's no question in my mind that teaching and learning can change. And I think I can claim that I'm a good example of what I'm saying. You know, do you think that I would have been talking to you and comfortable and confident and I'll stand against those who are against me doing this with you had it not been for the experience in 1979? No. So I came to you as a student. It has made a change. It doesn't mean that it takes away my critical thinking. You know what I mean? And because some people in my country here don't understand this. They think that they shake hands with Israelis, you become a Zionist. I'm not joking. You know, that there is people just would think that you kind of surrender everything. You know, just say, where can I donate something for Israel? You know? Well, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, you can shake hands, look at the other person in his eyes, and then he say, I object to certain policies perpetrated by your own government, or your own army. But at the same time, I see you as a human being. Sometimes people find it difficult. Education can change. Chinuch, ladies and gentlemen, Chavirim, let us read each other's literature. That is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, thank you. I have more questions, but I want if people are ready to wish to ask questions, please. If not, I will ask more.
Okay.
Anybody? So.
Avi, it's for you.
Okay, so let me ask you. Wait here. I see Michael. Michael want to ask. So Michael, bivakasha.
I hope that this is a legitimate question. First of all, I must say I had the pleasure of studying in the American University in Cairo in 1977, before the peace agreement, and I found my experiences in Cairo extremely rewarding. I came to Cairo under the auspices of an Egyptian professor who was my Arabic teacher, and she was a widow of the 1967 war. And I began studying with her in 1977, and in 1973, and a month after I began studying, the October War broke out. and I left my studies in the States to go back to Israel during the war. Not to fight, but as a volunteer in kibbutz.
Okay.
And in spite of this situation, my teacher being a widow of the 67 war, and me leaving her class to go off and study in the to go off to Israel in the 73 war, we remained very good friends, and under her auspices, I received a scholarship to study in Cairo. What I do want to say after listening to your amazing talk is that Egypt in the late 1970s was very different than the Egypt of today. And Israel of the late 1970s is very different than the Israel of today.
Yes.
And I would like to ask you, what do you feel about the things that you said in the last hour's talk, in lieu of not what happened in 1970s and 80s, but with the tremendous internal changes in Egyptian and Israeli society that I think make our challenges very, very much greater. And I would like to know what you think about this.
I think that I agree with you. There's been a change, and things now are as I think that they are more difficult now for the ideas of peace and amity, and suddenly, you know, it's becoming now prevalent in the Arab world, in Egypt and in the Arab world, that the word tatbi', you know, tatbi' means naturalization, making relations with Israel natural. It's a particular word that they, you know, came up with. It's called tatbi'. Is a horrible word now. They associated it with something almost like a, you know, sinful, you know, something bad. I think that if I may call you Michael, I think, Michael, it has the extremists have taken over in both countries. I think the religious right, I hope I'm not offending anybody with these terms, are a challenge for both of us. And I think at one point, we were, if you remember, we were ruled by the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, you know, for a year or so. And thank God we managed to get rid of them and just go for much more kind of a tolerant ways. But I think that what I find it very sad to say is that we have not in Egypt built on the goodwill of 1977 and 79. We have not invested in peace, but we've allowed something that is almost like a dual personality to develop, so that our government is and yours are in collaborating all the time. And let's not make a secret of this, even in intelligence, you know, sharing and all that stuff. We share with you what's happening in Sinai. We would tell you that maybe somebody's going to attack you. You do the same with us. This is really strange. And then at the same time, there is another level of relation, or a kind of relation that's between the people, which is forbidden for many Egyptians in here to communicate openly with you. What I am doing now with you is supposed to be, or considered by many of my fellow Egyptians to be, something that is against the national interest. And I find this strange, weird. If make up your mind, Israel is our friend and the co-signer of a peace treaty, or tear up the peace treaty and be honest with yourself and say, well, Israel is our enemy. You cannot have a split vision, you know, dealing with Israel. So you have that. And you must admit, Michael, and you agree with me, that also in your case, I mean, from the other side, from the Israeli side, you have also, for reasons of your internal politics, the vacuum has given some of your extremist elements to take over. Look at who is ruling your country now, and the people who are actually, kind of making the policy are in my view, extremists, right? And so, this is very, very unfortunate. And because I just feel that the people, decent people like us, like this group, we're kind of quieter, and the extremists are louder than us. Their voices are always louder. They are much more angry when they talk, and they just have this incredible energy, energized by some kind of very violent force inside them, and that's why they get recruits and get people to be around them. In the nature of things, in the human history, you will find that peace is based on a compromise. Peace is not something to be extremely proud of. That's why you have you ever heard of drums of peace? But you've heard of drums of war. Have you ever heard of a country say, I will declare peace on you? But rather, you make a declaration of war on the other. Human beings are screwed up human beings. They have this innate violence in them that would energize them. But when was it that you have people enthusiastically and demonstrating with passion to make an agreement with an enemy? Okay? And so we have to be cognizant of this human nature, that it is war that is louder in human records than peace. And something not exactly very heroic. There's nothing heroic about peace. Usually peace is made with apologies. Have you ever heard de Gaulle? What de Gaulle says about, kind of the honorable, like peace with honor. Peace with honor. Because you have to apologize, like we're making peace. I'm sorry, but we're gonna make peace. But if we make war, it's always with enthusiasm and drums and music and so on. And so let us be inspired by our holy books. Let us be inspired with what it says in the Torah of turning the spears into plowshares and to till the land rather than to kill a human being. Let us be part of that, let us be part of this whole symphony together of being brave enough to stand for what is decent in human relations, and that is to live in shared life. So I agree with you, Michael. Things are worse than in 1977, 79. In fact, it was a remarkable year of the least amount of attacks. I don't know if you noticed that. You go back to the record, 79 to 1980. It was from July of 79 that I came, did the Ulpan and all this stuff, and I left in May 1980. And hardly any kind of maybe a little incident in Jerusalem that I actually was a witness there. Somebody put something in a bicycle. It was a small incident, but it was. I don't think there was any major operations. Nothing was happening with the borders with Lebanon and so on. But let us be heartened by this fact, חברים. Okay. הכל הם אומרים ששלום בינינו הוא שלום קר, is it קר? cold? cold?
שלום קר.
ואני חושב ששלום קר יותר טוב ממלחמה חמה. Yeah. You understand? So let us all kind of celebrate with each other this particular fact. Our own wonderful leader Sadat, what did he say? Let 1973 be the last war between us. I mean, between these two sides. Forget about Lebanon, Syria, and all stuff.
Amen.
Just between these two countries. Is it not true that, you know, so far we have kept the peace together? Let's work on that. That's a fact. Let's work on it and be heartened by it. And okay, and whether we are religious or secular, praying, you know, let's say hallelujah that there is something, a peace that we can show to the world, and say in the beautiful words of the Torah, we have, you know, the Shmor Aleinu, okay, because we have made the spears of war into the plowshares to till the land, right? But let's work on that and develop it more.
Okay, thank you.
Good. I just want to ask you, Professor, you are coming to Israel. Will you see or will you give lectures in some Palestinian universities? Are you speaking with them?
Okay. No, during that year, no, I did not really go and cross there. But I made contact. First of all, I was in contact with my students, Arab students. I had about 10. We have, I told you that altogether was about 23, 24. 10 of them were Arabs from East Jerusalem. And I think that I had conversations, but remember, it's not only conversations. They would ask questions, and also remember that I was grading their papers. I also read their papers and so on. And, and so there was a real dialogue here because I was grading and commenting. And for the first time, the whole history of the Hebrew University, which is something I hope nobody's going to object to it. We allowed students to choose the language of the research. Yani, we said, okay, you can write it in Hebrew, the research paper, or Arabic or English. And my colleague, Eli Poudet would actually correct or, mark the papers in Hebrew, because my Hebrew is not as good as that. And I took care of the English and the Arabic. So I had 10 students, all 10, I think, chose to do it in Arabic because they're much more comfortable. And I believe that I helped them a lot because I showed them that they can still, yes, write in this comfortably in their own language, but they have to be academic in the way they write and apply all the rules of the academic and so on. So I had the conversation. No, I did not go to a Palestinian university, but I had a conversation and a dialogue with, I believe, a very important lady. I believe her name is Hiba al-Husseini from the famous Husseini family, and she is collaborating with Balin. What's his first name? Something Balin.
Yossi
Balin. And she came to the Hebrew University, giving a talk with Yossi Balin, and I had conversation with both of them. And then separately. And I saw Balin in his house, Yossi, and Madame Balin. And I saw Heba also on the, we talked in Arabic and so on. But no, I haven't been to a Palestinian one. But I would be very happy to go to. It hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Professor Kemאל Abdel-Malek, thank you very, very much. I think it was very interesting, very, very different from what we are usually talking about. And I think you gave us a new outlook. Those days are not easy, but hearing from you, I think, gives at least for me, gives me new optimism that we are not alone in this area, in this sphere or this world, and the peacekeepers and the peace activists are among.
We have reasons to be optimistic. We have reasons to be optimistic. We have some givens, you know, fact that we have had peace and so on.
Yeah,
but we need to develop it. It's almost like money. Like
Right.
we have a bank account that is joint, but it cannot just stay like this. Let us invest in the funds we have together.
Yes.
And start having dividends at the end.
It's a good, a very good example to end our conversation. So again, thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very, okay.
Thank you
Bye.
so
Bye.
much, Professor. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
That was a unique
Bye.
evening.
Thank you very much.
See
Okay.
you
להתראות.
soon. Once you come again, see you soon.
Yes.
Okay.
שוכרן.
אינשאללה,
שוכרן.
להיפגש עוד פעם, אולי בחיפה או ירושלים.
בשמחה רבה.
אוקיי,
אינשאללה.
יאללה.
אוקיי.
ביי,
תודה
good evening. תודה רבה
תודה רבה
לכולם.
לכולם.
כן, ביי ביי.
ביי.
ערב
ביי
טוב,
ביי. להתראות.
ביי ביי.
ביי.